Hello students, let us start with chapter 20 of biology, that is locomotion and movement. All organisms show various movements. Animals, unicellular organisms, everyone shows movements. We observe movement in amoeba, we see movement of cilia, flagella, tentacles in different organisms. Humans also move their limbs, jaws, eyelids, tongue. Now, out of all of these, only some movement result in change in location. So, locomotion can be defined as voluntary movement which result in change in location. All locomotion are movements, but all movements are not locomotion because not with every movement the position is changed. So, locomotion and movement are always interlinked. Like in paramecium, cilia help in the movement of food through the cytopharynx and in locomotion. Hydra uses its tentacles to capture its prey and for locomotion. Limbs help to change the body posture and for locomotion. There are three types of movements in humans. These are amoeboid, ciliary, and muscular movement. Amoeboid movement is shown by pseudopodia, which is formed by streaming of the protoplasm. Cytoskeletal elements like microfilament help in these movements. These movements are shown by our cells like macrophages and leukocytes. These are especially important in our immunity. The ciliary movement is shown by the cilia. Cilia in trachea helps us to remove the foreign substances out of our body. And oviducts also show this movement where they beat and they help to pass the ova. So this plays an important role in human fertilization. Then we also observe muscular movement. As the name suggests, this movement is shown by our muscles like movements of limbs, tongue, jaw, etc. Now, in amoeboid movement, what happens is the cytoskeletal elements they come ahead and they help to capture the bacteria. This is generally seen in phagocytosis. So the WBC will go and surround itself around the bacteria and it will engulf it. This is an example of amoeboid movement. Ciliary movement, as I told you, is shown by the cilia, which are found generally in the inner lining of the trachea. So these cilia are like brushes. They will beat and because of this, they will get all these foreign substances out. It is also shown by oviduct, which helps to place the ovum in the correct position for fertilization. Then our muscles. We have various muscles in our limbs, tongues, jaw, and we can move these parts because of them. So this type of movement is called muscular movement. We also see flagellar movement. So flagellar movement helps in swimming of these spermatozoa. It helps in maintenance of water current in the canal system of sponges and in locomotion of protozoans like Euglena. Now let us study about the human muscular system. So the human muscular system includes muscles which are mesodermal in origin. If you remember the derm cell, then mesoderm is one of the layers of the derm cell and the muscles originate from there. The muscles constitute 40 to 50% of our body weight. They have excitability, that is, they have neural excitability where the nerve cells are connected to them. They have contractility, they can contract and relax. They can extend, so they have extensibility and they have elasticity. They do not break easily. There are three main type of muscles found in our body. They are skeletal, visceral, and cardiac muscle. Let us study about each of these muscles in detail. So, the skeletal muscles are also called as striated muscles. These muscles, as the name suggests, are attached to our skeletons. They have striations. These patterns, which you see in the diagram, they are called striations. They are voluntary. That means we control them. They have rich blood supply. They are fatigue muscles. That is, after we use them, we'll experience some form of fatigue. The muscle fibers is multinucleate, so it has more than one nucleus, and they have a lot of mitochondria because they need a lot of energy supply for the movement. Then we have the smooth muscles or the visceral muscles. So as the name says, they are generally found in visceral organs. Here we don't see the striations that we see in the skeletal muscles. They are involuntary. That means they are not in our control. They are supplied with less blood. So they have poor blood supply and they are non-fatigued. That is, they will not get tired. They will keep working. They are uninucleate and they have less mitochondria because they will require less energy. Then we have the cardiac muscle. Now this is a very special muscle. As the name suggests, cardiac is a scientific name of heart. So they are present in the heart wall. Here also we see striations. They are involuntary. They have rich blood supply and they are non-fatigue. That means they will keep working till the person is alive. If the cardiac muscle stops working, then the heart stops. They are also uninucleate and they have more mitochondria because they are constantly beating. So this table shows you everything at glance. Which muscle does what, where it is found, whether it is voluntary, involuntary. We can see that visceral will have poor blood supply, whereas skeletal and cardiac will have rich blood supply. The skeletal muscles are fatigued, whereas the visceral and the cardiac muscle are not fatigued. Skeletal is multinucleate, whereas visceral and cardiac is uninucleate. Skeletal and cardiac will have more mitochondria, whereas visceral will have less mitochondria. Now let us try and understand the structure of skeletal muscle. So skeletal muscle is made up of many muscle bundles which are called as fascicles coming together, as you can see in the figure. These are held together by collagenous connective tissue layer which is called a fascia. These fibers, they are lined by a plasma membrane which is called the sarcolemma. It is called sarcolemma because it is enclosing the sarcoplasm. So each muscle fibers contains parallelly arranged myofilaments which help in the movement. Each of this myofibril has alternate dark and light striations. So the dark is the A band and the light one we call it as I band, that means isotropic band. Now, this is due to the presence of two fibrous contractile proteins, that is actin filament and myosin filament. Actin filament is thin, as you can see in the picture, and myosin filament are thicker. Then we have the sarcomeres. The I band contain the actin and the A band contain actin and myosin. They are arranged parallel to one another. So this arrangement is called as sarcomere. A band generally bears a lighter middle region called H band. It is formed only of myosin, nothing else is present here. And then there's a thin dark line, which is the M line, which runs through the center of the H zone, as you can see in the picture. Then we have the I band, which is bisected by a dense dark band, which is called the Z line. The region between two Z lines is what we call as sarcomere. So these sarcomeres are the structural and the functional unit of the muscles. The I band helps in bisecting this dark Z line. Here you can see the two pictures which show you the comparison and how the sarcomere structure is formed. Now let us study about actin filament. So an actin filament is made up of two filamentous actins which form a double helix like in DNA. F-actin is a polymer of monomeric globular actins, and the actin contains two other proteins which are tropomyosin and troponin. These two filaments of tropomyosin, they run along the grooves of F-actin forming the double helix, and the troponin has three subunits. It is located at regular intervals on the tropomyosin. In the resting state, that is when the muscle is not working, a subunit of troponin masks the binding site for myosin on the actin filaments. Then let us study about myosin filaments. So each myosin filament is a polymer of many monomeric proteins called meromyosins. It has two parts. One is the heavy meromyosin or HMM or the cross arm which projects outwards, and then we have the light meromyosin which forms the tail. Now the globular head is an active ATPase enzyme. This is where the ATP will come and bind, and it has active sites for the actin. So now let us understand how does a muscle contract. We have various theories to understand this. According to the sliding filament theory, contraction of a muscle fibers occurs when the thin filament, that is the actin, it slides over the thick filament, that is the myosin. Let us try and understand the steps which are involved during the process. So, to begin this process, an impulse from the central nervous system reaches the neuromuscular junction by motor neuron. It is carrying the impulse, so obviously the neuron is the motor neuron. What is the neuromuscular junction? It is basically a synapse. Synapse is a gap between the motor neuron and the sarcolemma of the muscle fibers. So, a motor neuron and the muscle fibers, they combine together to form a motor unit. Now, after this, the synaptic vesicles, they release a neurotransmitter called acetylcholine. There is a gap here. So, the movement has to occur with the help of a neurotransmitter. So, this generates an action potential in the sarcolemma which spreads throughout the muscle fiber. So, this was one of the qualities of the muscle excitability which I told you earlier. Now, this will cause the release of calcium ions from the sarcoplasmic cisternae into the sarcoplasm. So, the calcium will bind with a subunit of troponin on the active filament, and it will unmask the active site for myosin. So, using the energy from ATP hydrolysis, myosin head will bind to the active sites on the actin, and it will form a cross bridge, as you can see. So because of this cross bridge formation, there will be a pull. Okay, so this pulls the active filament on both sides towards the center of the A band. Active filaments partially overlap so that now the H zone has completely disappeared. After this, the Z line attached to the actin is also pulled inwards. So this causes shortening or contraction of the sarcomere, and because of this, the I bands get shortened and the A bands retain the length. Now, myosin releases the ADP and the phosphate and goes back into its own relaxed state, and a new ATP will come and bind the cross bridge and it will break it. So, the ATP is again hydrolyzed by the myosin hand, and the whole process will be regenerated, causing further sliding. When calcium ions are pumped back to the sarcoplasmic cisternae, the active filaments are again unmasked. So because of this, the Z lines will return to their original position, and this will cause relaxation of the muscles. So this is how muscle contraction works. I hope you all understood it. So the reaction time of the fibers varies in different muscles. Repeated activation of the muscles lead to lactic acid, which causes muscle fatigue. So why is this? This is because when we are exercising too much, there is more muscle contraction, which causes our body to switch to anaerobic respiration because we are running short of oxygen now. So during anaerobic respiration, we have already learned that lactic acid is produced. So we will feel cramps in our muscles because of this, right? So that is why we feel cramp after we do exercise, which can be easily cured with the help of hot baths or by rubbing that region where we are feeling the cramp. Now let us also understand about red muscle fibers and white muscle fibers. So red muscle fibers are basically the aerobic fibers, and white muscle fibers, they have lesser myoglobin. They are whitish in color. Let us understand the differences. The red muscle fibers are red color due to the presence of myoglobin. The white ones will have lesser myoglobin, so they are whitish in colors. The red muscle fibers have more mitochondria, whereas the white muscle fibers will have less mitochondria. As I told you, red muscle fibers will play a role in aerobic metabolism, that is, they'll work with the presence of oxygen, whereas the white ones will work in anaerobic metabolism. The red ones show slow and sustained contraction, whereas the white ones show fast contraction for short period. So these are useful in sprints where we have to run for short distances. I hope you all understood locomotion and muscle contraction properly. In the next video, we will learn about the skeletal system. Thank you.